Wow, we have a big topic to cover today. We're going to be talking about what to do next and how to handle a forced pause, or what is more commonly known as a layoff. With the recent tech turn that has had so many companies laying people off the last couple months, me being an ex-Googler, the news that 12,000 Googlers were laid off, seeing all the posts from my colleagues on LinkedIn and reading about where they are and their resilience, and all of that has really prompted me to respond. And so to me, this Pausecast here, this episode is ideally going to add some value for you if you were laid off, or if you're really struggling with that transition of where do I go from here. So I hear you, I see you, and I just want to give you as much value as possible. And stay tuned towards the end because I've got some next steps for you to follow. All right, so let's get into it. You're laid off, now what? I want to talk about 3 uncomfortable truths about layoffs. And if you don't know me or my story, I wasn't laid off per se, but I could tell you I've been in the room where I had the choice to be laid off. Back in 2000 at DoubleClick, I also took a leave of absence because I feared being laid off. I feared being told that I wasn't going to make the cut in the future, or that I wanted to beat them to it, so to speak, before they laid me off and get out of my predicament, which really prompted this whole turn of my career, of my life. This whole career turn of my life was different as a result. And all of this is what I'm sharing because I burned out of Google over 10 years ago now, but it really gave me a sense of a lot of things I'm going to talk about, in particular, that you are not your job, you are not your identity as work. And what will you do if you don't feel aligned? And to me, that's what I did. So for me, my story is a little different. I didn't get laid off per se, but a pause is an intentional shift in behavior. And so I took a 3-month unpaid break, and I really used that time to assess what I wanted and where I wanted to go. I was very intentional about it because I knew what I knew. I knew I didn't want to stay on the path I was on. It wasn't working for me. I felt horrible. I felt like a failure most of the time, completely in anxiety, fear up and down the wazoo. I just felt like this can't be it. This can't be the way that it's supposed to feel, that I'm supposed to feel all the time. And so today, this is, I think, a way to think about things. You know, if I look at my story and then all the things I've learned. So I started studying emotional intelligence as a result of burning out because I was so unaware of how I was feeling, because it got me into that predicament. And I talk about all these different pauses in the book Pause. So I actually think the book Pause is a great resource while you're on a forced pause or you're in transition. So, hey, if you want to read that, it's available in Amazon on audiobook. Grab it, Pause. You'll see it there. It's my contribution based on all the lessons that I'd learned, and you'll learn and pick up so many tools based in emotional intelligence and stories, including one from my friend Joe, who was on a forced pause, this layoff from Time Warner at the time. So when I think about pausing and layoffs, I talk about these 4 signs you know you need a pause. And the 4th sign is that there is a challenge. So you feel like you are a deer in the headlights and there's this big challenge in front of you. Now, it might be a layoff. It might be a health challenge. It might be a big decision that is perplexing you. It could be a family crisis. Like, it could be anything, relationship. But in that, I would say a challenge in most cases, and 99.9% is a layoff, right? You all of a sudden go from a structured world with control over what you make, over how you show up, your job, you have responsibilities. It's actually a very tightly structured space usually. And then all of a sudden you're just let go, like boom, released into the wild, like, whoa. So first know that is a sign, even if you didn't, even if you're still reeling in shock, or if you don't know what to do next, know that this is an opportunity. It's actually an opportunity for you to think about things in a little different way. And we're going to get into that. So just know that really, this is a challenge, as we all know, but it also means, okay, wow, I am in an intentional shift in behavior right now, and I can do something different. And I think that that's a really important thing to remember, because a lot of times we just think we got to move on, push and plow through to do something different. And that's just not the case. In fact, that's probably the worst thing that you can do, because you're in shock, you're in trauma. There is healing to happen, whether that just means even in a way grieving the loss of what you were doing, right? And even it doesn't even matter if you loved or hated your role, like and it could be anything like that, but it's an opportunity for you to take a time out, literally, and pause, because that's what can be different. So I want to read to you a little bit, just because it's in this book. I got the book Pause in front of me. So sign 4, right? I just talked about this. A major life event, challenge, or change happens. And I read this as a reminder, because even when I read it now, here I am years later reading this book, I'm like, oh yeah, that's so important. And so I just pass this along, right? So change is inevitable, and pausing to assess your options or before your next move is a prime opportunity to choose wisely. Pausing is one way to allow yourself the space to evaluate your choices and align with what matters to you. I think that's really key. It could be driven by your yearnings or what is most important. These yearnings are your deeper desires, or maybe it's an opportunity to do something different, right? The key is that you allow yourself this time to pause. It might be a breath. It might be taking the week to really figure out what you want. It could be several months, and like maybe you're fortunate enough to have a severance package. But the idea is that you create a new opportunity for thoughts and emotions and new behavior to emerge. The bottom line is, when we do pause, it can have a really profound effect on what flows from there. So that's from the book, and I just kind of read page 25. But maybe that gives you some thought and some inspiration. Maybe that gives you some thought, some inspiration to know that things can be different. But if we're intentional about it, then we can actually shift our own energy into what we want. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit towards the end too, about what we put out there as we express, as we share, as we do and go about our business, can be completely go in another direction if we really intended to be received well. All right. So now that you know what a pause is and a forced pause is, and I talked a little bit about my story, I want to get into these uncomfortable truths about layoffs. And I think the first thing is a big one, and it's a hard truth. And the first one is, your identity is not your work. And say that one with me. My identity is not my work. And just take a breath into that. And just feel your body. Like, where do you feel that tension? And even if you weren't laid off, right? Like that's a universal fact. But I think as awesome achievers, type A's, people who've done really well and successfully made a mark for themselves, it's so easy to get wrapped up in that. But that's the thing we have to remember. Your identity is not your work. You can be proud of your work. It can be something you've put out there in the world and see as a tangible object, like, hey, look, I've done this. Like, this is a result of who I am and what I've contributed, but it is not you. You are so much bigger, so much greater than just what is defined in a core job. And I think we forget that. I know that's why I burned out. I thought that was everything. And all of a sudden I felt horrible. I felt like a failure. I felt like I was always in a mental tailspin, because my whole identity was wrapped up in what I did mostly. And even if it wasn't, I thought temporarily that it was, because it was so much of my own focus. So know that your value is far greater than work. And this particular job, whatever you are doing right now in your career, is like a stepping stone. It's where you're at now. It's a point in time, and you are infinite, whether it's your power, whether it's your thoughts, whether it's what you want to do in your dreams, in the zone of possibility. And even beyond death, you're infinite, right? You have a soul and your energy is felt by others. I mean, that's like what we're really getting to, right? And I'm getting a little bit metaphysical here, but just know, I think the biggest thing is your identity is not your work. And I think if you're feeling that shock and the aftershock of a layoff, or maybe you were the one doing that as a manager or director, and you're feeling just tremendous guilt, right? Just know that this is not about you. This is you as a person. This is about what the business needs. And times are tough right now, as we all know, with recession looming, and we don't even need to get into it, but the idea is that I think the bottom line, we just forget that, especially if we really like what we do, or we are contributing in ways where it's like a lot of what we're about these days, right? And that's why it's so important to know that you can expand what you think of as your identity beyond work big time. And pausing is one really powerful way to do that, right? Even if that's just journaling. I'm a big fan of journaling because it's an opportunity to get your unconscious mind unraveled a little bit, to get thoughts down on paper that you wouldn't otherwise have realized. So then you get new insights and you're like, oh, holy cow, I didn't even know that I felt this way. And I encourage you, and this is an invitation, just to take a journal. I would actually say, don't do it on electronics. Don't put it in a doc electronically. Don't type it. Your mind and your brain are wired so that when you actually use a pen or a pencil on paper, you are thinking and processing differently than your thoughts. And when you're typing, it's a different effect. So go old school, take a journal and write. I am such a big fan of that. And it's for you. You don't have to share it with anybody, and even just set a timer for 2 minutes. Just try it. There's been studies done, and I talk about this in the book as well, but even journaling for 2 minutes over 4 days about something emotional, meaning it matters to you, improved mood. I mean, that's a pretty big deal, right? 4 days, 2 minutes, that's a total of 8 minutes. So there's a lot there, I think, that we can glean from. So knowing that you're not your work, right? This is what I want you to think about. You get to design your path from this point forward. And maybe you've already done that. Cool. Now you get to take the next step, intentional shift in behavior, right? So that you can journal on too. But the idea is that, remember, we get so wrapped up in work that we think that is us and individuals. But the reality is we are simply here doing these jobs that we need to do. And they are valuable and they're great. And they sustain our lifestyle, and we contribute, and we can feel valued and seen and make a difference and all of these things. However, it's just not all of you, but we forget that. And so I'm here to remind you that your identity is not your work. That's the first uncomfortable truth. And it's a big one. So if you need time to process that, if you're noticing you want to stop this podcast right now and forget about it, that's a great noticing awareness to know that resistance just means it is uncomfortable. There's fear here. Just notice how you're feeling right now. Maybe you're feeling joy because you're like, hey, oh my God, thank you for saying that. Like, I don't want it to be my identity. So we have a choice, and we get a choice to think about how we want to move forward. And that's the beauty, I think, of a pause, right? Okay, so let's get to the second uncomfortable truth, right? You ready for this one? This one's a big one. And I think in the corporate world, it's a little different and challenging to think about. But what I like to say is you cannot think your way out of an identity crisis. You just can't think it out of your way, or you can't get out of it just thinking, intellectualizing this. And that would be like a forced pause, right? What do I mean by that? And what do you think about that? I'm curious. Do you feel like that's just like crazy, or are you getting what I'm putting down? Now, why can't you think your way out of it? So we have what we call a body. I'm being a little silly here, but we are intellectual, especially working in corporate tech. And if you're a corporate leader or an executive, we live from the neck up a lot of times in the day job, right? I don't, this is like, if you're an athlete, if you use your body, great. But I'm not talking about that, because we have a full body from the neck down. We have an entire landscape where we can connect and cue in and see how we're feeling, so that we can respond to others in a way that moves things forward, so that we can know where we're at. So we might need a minute to regroup, or we might choose different responses if we're able to actually understand where we're at in a quick moment, to not just knee-jerk react or defend ourselves, but to do something different. So you can't think your way out of an identity crisis. So you can journal all you want, you can do all these things, and that's a really good thing. I'm not saying don't think about it. What I'm saying is we need to heal, and it's somatic, meaning it involves our bodies. Our bodies store at a cellular level in the fascia emotions from everything, whether they've, whether they've been recent or in the past that still needs to heal. And we're adding that in a big event like this, if you are laid off, right? So we need to acknowledge what's going on in our bodies. And that's where we see things like physical ailments show up, right? Oh, my back hurts. My lower back is killing me. I can't figure out why I'm not moving the way I used to move, or I don't feel like I want to do anything, right? That's a motivation issue, but it's also physical motion sometimes. So we have to do things to not just do intellectual things, which are great and helpful, but we need to complement it with help in healing from our neck down, because we are a holistic self, right? You are not just your thoughts. You are not just your mind. You are a full person. You are a human, right? So I work a lot in the modality of breath work. Breath work is a way to heal trauma and the body, and it can be so simple and effective and powerful because you change the chemistry of your body, your blood oxygen levels change, you're intentional, you're bringing your energy online as opposed to autopilot when we're just breathing normally. And so that's a wonderful tool. And if you're, and there's other ways as well, right? So there's meditation, there's getting outside in nature. But what I'm saying is, where do you notice this in your body? And maybe you can't even feel anything in your body. Like you don't know where it is. You just feel maybe a little bit sad or angry, right? Like all of this is important data. I think of it as data. I have a practice on Mondays called Mindset Mondays. It's a 30-minute, usually breathwork specific, free webinar that I do. And it's part of my other organization, the startup incubator company, Sick Venture Studio. But I'm inviting all of you who do listen to this to join us. It's on Eventbrite, and you can sign up, and I'll put the link in the show notes, but it's the first 3 Mondays of every month for breath work. Then I also do private one-on-one sessions. I do workshops. I do every Friday in my Facebook group, we do a little bit of breathing. So the key is just to introduce it to yourself. There's a lot going on in that world. It's actually one of the most popular, fast accelerating modalities. And a lot of times, like the biggest thing I hear is, oh, I don't have time. Like, I don't think breathing solves anything. Like, what do you mean? Like breathing? I breathe all the time. Well, yeah, you do. And nothing wrong with that. However, when we make it intentional, and again, this is a pause, right? This is conscious breath. We're actually moving energy. We're moving our own state of being. So maybe we go from feeling all frumpy and sad to expansive and liberated, right? That's a total normal reaction sometimes. It just depends, and every experience is unique. But the bottom line is, know that you can't just think your way out of an identity crisis or out of a layoff, because we have these bodies where we're going to remember this shock, and it's going to come back unless we really acknowledge what's going on. And I can tell you, as an executive coach, as a leadership coach, well, not most, but I'll just say there's many, many individuals who just don't think it's important to acknowledge that body part, like your own body. And then, what the research is telling us more and more now that we have MRI scans and, the power of learning about our body and healing trauma, as we've now been able to in even like the last 20 years in research and neuroscience and things like that, is that, there is this mind body, and it's like a tuning fork. So whatever we're experiencing gets stored in the body unless we address it and actually allow it to be completed, whether that means expressing feelings, just saying them out loud, or things like breath work. Okay, so that's an uncomfortable truth too. How are you feeling about that one? Take a deep breath with me. I don't like that one myself. I'm like, what do you mean I can't think my way out of it? A lot of us are, as my old coach Bob Wright would say, smart rats. We are smart rats. We love to think, and we wouldn't be where we are today if we weren't smart, right? So the key is to know that there is so much more of you that is intelligent, and yes, it is your thoughts, but it's also your body, you have a gut brain, you have a heart brain, all of these things need to work together. And if we ignore those, we are leaving part of us behind. And that's where we end up getting sick. We get diseases, illnesses kick in because we're not really honoring our full on self, in my opinion. That's really where I stand with that. Okay. And so let's get to the third uncomfortable truth. Oh my gosh, this one, this is such a good one. I love this one. So the third one is, man, okay, you are in a pause when you are laid off. You're in this unknown. You're basically in the unknown, right? Well, what is that all about? So when you're in the unknown, what is the feeling that you feel as I say that? I know for me and most other people, the unknown is really scary. It's not comfortable. And it's out of our comfort zone because we can't control anything. We are, a lot of us, interested in controlling things, right? So I talk about how much courage it takes to pause in this world. So just know that you are so courageous right now, knowing you're not in a structured environment. If you were laid off, or that you are going to be soon, like maybe with severance running out or something. And I also talk about this in the book Pause, because we are so afraid to be with ourselves sometimes. This is such a crazy, uncomfortable truth. Like, who's squirming in their seat right now or walking as you listen to this? And one of my scholar practitioners I studied, you may have heard of Paul Tillich, and he wrote a book called Courage to Be, and he's an existentialist philosopher. He talks about courage, which is defined as the ability to do something that you know is difficult or dangerous. Courage is the ability to do something that you know is difficult or dangerous. Brené Brown talks about courage, that it's required to be vulnerable to be courageous, right? To put yourself out there, to do something dangerous is being vulnerable. So automatically courage takes vulnerability, and it takes knowing that you're doing something difficult or dangerous. And so to me, that pause process, this layoff world, is courage. It means you're okay knowing you're in that uncertain outcome. It means letting go of control and surrendering to this present time, your present moment, right? Whatever that might be. This is a tremendous act of courage. And to talk about it takes courage. To take action, to journal takes courage. Like, just give yourself some credit. A lot of times, it's so easy to think of shameful thoughts, or like, oh, what did I do to deserve this? We can get into self-pity mode. Man, all of that is very likely possible outcomes, but go back to this knowing you have a choice, saying, hey, you know what? Like, this is actually pretty courageous. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to get through this. I don't know what lays on the other side, but you're in that blank space of a pause, of this layoff. And trust yourself to know that even though it feels scary, there is another side. You are going to come out on the other side. You are a capable, competent individual who can do something different. And when we feel rattled a little bit, an example, right, being laid off, then our confidence gets a little bit just disturbed. And then we fall back and we decide, okay, forget that. I'm not going to do something. I'm not saying don't do what you want to do. And this is why it's so important to do the things I'm talking about, like journaling, do things with your body. Like, it's going to bring in new insights for you, because your brain is making unconscious connections with your conscious. 95% of your brain is subconscious programming. So we need to do things to bring things up that will help us move through this in a good way. Right. So those are the three things, so knowing that you're in the unknown, know that you are courageous. It takes courage to be yourself and be like, who am I? Okay, I'm not my job. What do I want? What would fit my world now? Right. And maybe you're in an environment where you don't have a big, crazy choice and you're going to do the same thing. That's okay. It's all good. Just know that this is also choosing for what is next for you. You always have a choice. You have a choice to defer looking for a job for 2 weeks because you're grieving this process, right? You have a choice to share and express. And that's what I actually really think is important and during this time, right? So real quick recap, the uncomfortable truths. One is you are not your work. And you say that one out loud with me. I am not my work. Number 2, you can't think your way out of an identity crisis. Number 3 is you are in the unknown and you can come on out of it the other side. And they're all probably resonant for feelings like feeling fear, doubtful, maybe sad, hurt, angry. I mean, these are big, big, big things. And so how do we handle all of this, right? So this is, I think, so important, right? And remember, like, I just so see you and feel you right now, because you're only, like, we are all human and we have feelings, and yours might have felt a little trampled on, right? Or you feel rage because what the heck, I worked for this company for 20 years and now I'm not even there, and I just didn't even get anything other than like, sorry, you're gone, right? So we got to handle our energy in a way that really serves us. And I'll try to wrap this up quickly here, but overall, know that your energy is what's received in the world. So if you are complaining, bitching, blaming, shaming, justifying, whatever is going on for you, know that that's what's received. So you're probably, what comes around goes around, right? So we need to allow ourselves to shift out of that. And again, you have a choice to act responsibly, to share responsibly. I'm not saying that that's not valued, but allow yourself maybe 2 minutes, right? Give yourself the timer, 2 minutes to complain, or I'm gonna like stomp around my house for a minute, and I'm gonna have a good cry, like whatever that is for you. And then say, okay, it's not about me wallowing in my own pity or feeling victimized, because that's just not going to serve you. And that's actually really, really draining of your energy. The idea is to keep expressing, but just name those feelings. It's so, so important. I feel angry. I feel hurt. I feel upset. I feel sad. I feel terrified. Whatever is coming up for you, just put that in your journal, rip out the pages, tear them up, throw them out if you want to let go of those feelings, but know that that's part of the processing, right? And that's why pausing is so key, because you can't just move through that stuff. That's what gets stored in your body if you don't pay attention. So keep expressing, naming those feelings. And then I'm also such a fan of gratitude and that practice where we orient thinking towards the positive. And that is so hard right now, right? But here's the thing, and I love sharing this. It's actually physiologically impossible to feel anger and gratitude at the same time. Like your body and your brain cannot process that. So if you are feeling angry, the antidote is to not acknowledge that, and then turn it towards gratitude. Transmute that anger into, what am I going to do differently now? Okay, I'm going to be grateful for 3 things when I wake up in the morning, right? We can all be grateful for that. Gratitude is so powerful. And if you need support on your energy, because this is hard, right? This is behavioral change. This is changing our thoughts. This is navigating the negative, our critic mind. That is so, so important. And that's something that I spend a lot of my time coaching my clients in, and I'm happy to share more about that. If you'd like, just like direct message me and I can send you some tools. Just direct message me energy, like that word energy, and I can follow up. So this brings us to next steps, which is basically messaging me if you want more support. This podcast, this comes out weekly every Tuesday, and I really hone these messages for corporate leaders and executives who are ready to rise to their next level of leadership. And again, the sign of a layoff is maybe a sign for your next level of leadership, whether that means being more authentic, getting a new job, maybe it's a lateral move, maybe it's a new company, maybe it's going out on your own. It's all good stuff. You don't have to dismiss anything right now, right? But the idea is that these podcasts are here for you. And this is episode 78. So we've got a lot of resources here. You can listen to a bunch. So subscribe, because I'll be having more coming your way, and you don't want to miss anything. Join my Facebook group. So my Facebook group is called Pause to Thrive, Feminine Leadership Tools, and it's for physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual growth. And it is primarily for women, but it's really for anyone who wants to join us. So you can find me here in the show notes as well. And it's called Be the Pause. And you can just Google me and find it as a Facebook group. But I go live there every Friday with videos. I talk about trainings. I have sessions where you can ask me anything. We do live coaching. I do breath work in there. It's really good for just, touching base if you want a regular cadence of learning things about how to be more in a place that doesn't feel overwhelmed, but feels confident, calm, energized, things like that. And then I do have a opportunity for you to get some coaching. So I've opened up 5 slots on my calendar in the first week of this month, or I guess this week only. And these are 30-minute sessions, amplify your impact strategy sessions. These are usually a $300 30-minute coaching call, but the idea is that we're going to talk about your challenge. So maybe you were laid off, you don't know what to do. Maybe you want to think about doing something different. Career transitions are a lot of what I did that myself. I've helped a lot of folks. We'll get into that and come up with recommendations on next steps. And I'll give you a tool. Like you'll learn about a tool that will work based on what your experience has been. So I just gave you a lot of info. I hope this was helpful for you. Know that you are not alone. I see you and I am with you, and you'll get through this. This is actually maybe the silver lining is the gift where you get to redesign your life in this pause period, this forced pause, because you realize there is more for you, or there is something different for you. And I'm just so excited to see where you go and help and support you. Thank you for tuning in, and leave me a direct message if this helped. You can leave that on anchor.fm, my podcast platform. Message me, DM me on Instagram, Rachael_O'Mara, or you can join my group, Be the Pause, on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. You can LinkedIn with me. It's all good stuff. Thank you. Have a wonderful day and much love.